America.
Actually, the UK is worse. But
America. You're a citizen now, right?
No, not.
Oh, I thought.
No, still, which we can talk about because
we should talk about it.
There's some differences between all those things. Yeah, and it matters.
There are. You're not really in the club yet.
No, but yeah. But those things, there's three distinctions. But yeah, so and those things kind of matter because people kind of mix them up and yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right. Are you cameraing? We're cameraing. All right. I'm here with Reishin Toolsi in the even cooler Hat Studio. And we're trying to amp up the cool factor here. We're just having a little debate as to whether it should be glasses on or glasses off.
You should always have glasses on, but for now,
because I can't really see you very well.
I'm going to go glasses off for now.
Be careful, because this shirt is going to... You may want to...
I can't see a thing. The shirt blinds me.
It blinds you, yeah. So there's a little story behind the shirt I'm going to tell in a second. This is your first... Well, so this is not your first time here. This is not your first time to be on one of my podcasts. You've been on many times. But it is, on the Oil and Gas Tech Show, which for OGGN, which I still do. I still do that show. And you're welcome to come on anytime you want. Not anytime. Most anytime. And but it's your first time to be on the new show. It's also your first time to be in the studio since we stocked the bar. And it's a whole flurry of firsts because it's your first time to have a Rob Roy.
It's my first time, Rob. It's actually very good.
And which is Manhattan with Scotch, basically. So salute. Yeah, we should start off with like a friendly cheers at the beginning, just in case we get in an argument later. We'll have a good memory.
We should talk about that. Why do people argue?
Why do people argue?
Because they don't know how to have conversations.
Yeah.
So they escalate into an argument because you want to win. I want to crush your point of view because people think that they can convince people to change their minds, and you can never convince anyone to change their mind.
Yeah, but people do change their minds.
But people can change their minds, but you can't convince someone to change their mind.
So how do they end up changing their minds?
I think if you just maybe speak to people with the relative respect and try and understand their point of view, even though it may be it may make your skin crawl a little, if you can try and understand it, maybe
that's why
it might
we have the drinks, because it helps with the skin crawling.
Sometimes, yeah. But there are some issues that are kind of binary that you should never there's no middle ground with some of these issues. But some things it's easy. People want the same things in the world. They want to live relatively good lives, not mess around too much and have fun, take care of themselves, they got families. If not,
I think so. I think people still want those things. Although sometimes I think that maybe they're preoccupied with other things at the moment. But we probably get ahead of ourselves. We should back up.
Yeah.
Which we're good at, you and I. We're very good at just launching right into some completely unplanned conversation. Prosperity. We cover that. First of all, since this is a new audience, hopefully there's an audience. It's a new show, so you never really know for sure. So it might just be two people, but
could be six. I'm going for six.
Six.
Yeah, because that's like way over. That's better.
Yeah. So even if it's just six people, let's do a little introduction. I haven't had you introduce yourself on a show in a long time because usually everybody knows who you are. But we're not in the oil and gas world. We're not in the technology world now. So
for the six folks that I hope are listening, my name is Reishin. My name is Reishin Toolsi. I live in Houston.
Yeah.
I was actually born...
long walks on the beach.
I like long walks on the beach. I do like barbecue. We've talked about good barbecue.
You do like barbecue, yeah.
I like a relatively nice barbecue somewhere. We can get together, have a conversation, have some barbecue, have a few drinks, have a conversation, have an argument. But as long as you, finish that argument with a joke, I don't see why you should not continue.
I don't think we've ever had... Have we had an argument? Certainly not on a podcast, because on the tech show we have to...
Oh, you never win an argument against me.
Clearly, but... What about at the pub visits? I'm trying to think if we ever had a...
No, we haven't. What we did encounter was that weird dude at the one pub we tried to do a podcast, and that was getting under me, where the guy kept interrupting.
Yeah.
The guy was clearly out of his mind, and we were trying
about going to Mars or something
he was talking about stuff.
He was already there, maybe.
He was on Mars. Yeah. He was saying, come join me.
Yeah.
Come join me, and this is the path to it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, I was up for that.
L. Ron Hubbard's great-grandson.
Look, we were in the middle of COVID back then. I was like, look, obviously there's, if Mars might be the way to go, I'm going to follow this stranger in a bar to Mars. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a solution. Yeah,
that was true. Yeah, but we don't always agree on everything.
You shouldn't agree on everything.
But you and I don't always agree. We agree on a lot of things, but we don't agree on everything.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because that's what most people are.
Right.
A lot of people agree on most things, and the things that you don't agree on, it's okay on some aspects.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, let's take a good example. Is there's a new Netflix show. I'm not trying to pitch Netflix here. The Jeffrey Dahmer show.
you could have just said the no. Never mind.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So there's a show about Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Like, I certainly won't want to agree with anyone that says,
There's a show about, wait. So for those maybe who weren't around at the time, Jeffrey Dahmer is who is
the cannibal who killed 17 young men.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Pretty rough, right? And, he did over a long period of time. He was apparently could have got caught at any one of those periods, and he was so blatant with these escapades, he could have got caught, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Not Dahmer, but cannibalism, right? I certainly don't want to be around people who think that cannibalism is the way to go. Like, there's no middle ground there.
No, right.
Yeah, right? They'd be like, look, with the right seasoning, I'd be like, look, buddy.
Well, you've just never had good. That's what people always tell me about salmon, right? Like, well, you've just never had good salmon.
You've never had
but I have had good salmon, and I still don't like it. But
it's and with cannibalism, there's good reason why that should be. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's any middle ground there. Like, you could make a good argument, like, look, the food supply is really slow. I was like, look, buddy.
No, it doesn't.
I'm not a vegan. It doesn't appeal to me. But if the cannibalism is where to go, I'm going to welcome veganism.
Yeah, you gotta draw the line somewhere, right?
Exactly.
So sure. So where were you going?
To the 5 out of 6 people who are not vegans on that podcast, be a vegan, man. If that makes you happy, go ahead. Yeah. Knock yourself out. Yeah.
Eat what you like. Okay, so let's back up again. So this show, as I was telling you before we got started, and the reason why, obviously, I always call you when I just need somebody to be on the show, and I don't want to have to do a lot of preparation. So, because we don't really have to do any of that. But this is a new show. It's a new network, the BrainPub Network, which we're just getting it launched. Dan Alford, of course, here at Hat Studio, where this is part of his facility. You and Dan were on OGG Unscripted together. That was the first time you met.
I like Dan a lot. He's a super smart guy. Yeah. He's very calm, very casual.
Yeah. I don't know about the smart part, but the rest of it, I think you got it.
He knows that.
He's very smart. And so we started this network because, he's got a show called The Roboticist Chronicles. So that's now part of the network, and this is part of the BrainPub Network. And the whole concept, of the network, is to not just be a catalog of podcasts, but to have kind of this common theme of we should be able to sit down and talk about things and not always agree and still be friends. And it's good if we don't. It's good if we don't agree. So this particular show in BrainPub Network is about it's called Saving the Dream. Whether it ought to be saved is actually a topic for discussion. But the dream in reference to the American dream, which, by the way, this is another first, is I've never used gaff tape as a coaster before.
And you never will again.
But, it depends on whether I remember to bring the coasters and whether Trevor has to keep making new ones. So this is the book, The Epic of America, written by James Truslow Adams. Now, I don't know what episode you're going to be because you're part of the first 5 that I'm doing to get this thing launched. So I've already talked about this on a couple that I recorded already. But the book, this is with the phrase "the American Dream." It goes back to this guy, 1931, when he wrote this book.
I didn't know that.
Now this is a 1932 printing, and it's interesting because the part where he talks about the American Dream, it's not at the beginning. It's not. And by the way, he wanted to title it The American Dream, and I've said this before, but it was 1931, and the publishers thought maybe The American Dream isn't a good title for a book in the middle of the Depression. So he called it The Epic of America, because really, The Epic of America, the book is a look back on everything that has transpired even before the foundation of the United States up until this point. And so where he talks about the American Dream is actually at the end in the epilogue, ironically on page 404. So
it's a journey to the dream.
So 404. Never mind.
Era?
It is on page. It's on page 404.
404. Website down.
404. American Dreams. And the idea is, he's saying that at that point in time, he's looking back and he's saying, what we have created here is this place and this idea of the American Dream, and it's a place where people can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter, or be here or whatever, and it doesn't matter what you're. Now, of course, at the time he was thinking a lot about like the old European societies and some other places in the world, But broadly speaking, it doesn't matter where you're from or what your station in life or whatever. There's an opportunity for you to have a better, richer, fuller life, right? Not richer in the sense of like more money necessarily, but a richer, fuller life is available to everybody. Commonly, we think, that means if you work hard and things like this, right? So, is that what you think of when you think of? So you came here from another country.
I did.
Like you ain't from here.
I'm not from around these parts.
So, was the notion of the American dream, was that in your head like when you came here, or did you just get here by accident?
I mean, this is not my first rodeo, right? So I've been here a few times, but I'm sticking around this time.
Yeah. And how long have you been like permanently here?
8 years.
8 years?
8 years, yeah. I will say this though, a little harken back to what you just said. It is interesting though that that Mike and I are married because we both use coasters when we don't have to. And what's interesting is that both our wives have never met. They come from different backgrounds, different cultures.
That's true. They're very different.
And they still insist on coasters.
Yeah, why shouldn't they?
Is that like an American
thing? In this
thing?
it's really Johnny who insists on the coasters because he bought the furniture.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
Johnny's kind of our studio wife. So
he's a big dude though.
He's not here right now, so it's okay. We can say that sort of thing. Yeah, we do. Well, because otherwise it leaves the wet ring.
Which you got from your family?
What I do not do is use a coaster with stemware because you don't need to. And it actually kind of drives me crazy when you're at a bar or restaurant and you order a martini and they try to give you the little napkin under it because you don't need it
because they don't know what else to do.
It's right. It's unnecessary.
It's just like tribal knowledge, right? Which is really Like,
yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
so
I'm foreign, not from around these parts.
That's for sure.
But this is my second rodeo as an immigrant.
Yeah, in this country.
No, actually, no. So it gets complicated. So
we ran you off the first time. You decided to give it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was a different lifetime, but yeah, you ran me off from these spots, but I came back again because stubborn that way.
Yeah. Well,
so I grew up in South Africa, where I was raised. South Africa.
So you said it really quickly, where Americans can't really understand what you said, but
South Africa. Africa. It's a country in the southern part of Africa.
Right. It's not just a demarcation of southern Africa.
And that's true because do
people get confused about that?
People get confused all the time. Yeah, people get confused all the time about that. Yeah. So it does help that people like Trevor Noah is out there, kind of like spreading it. Charlize Theron, who's a very beautiful woman, she's actually South African.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the actress.
I did not know that.
Yeah. There's a few other, actresses.
There's a whole Lethal Weapon episode about South Africa.
There is exactly. Yeah, we've had a long and interesting and storied history that it's not a very good one, but there's positive outcomes of it.
Yeah, sure.
If anyone wants to go visit, I highly recommend it. The friendliest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be a tourist in.
Eugene Becker, you know Eugene, right? Yeah. He's in fact, I told the story I think on a previous episode about how I was talking about the network, BrainPub Network, and how Eugene came to the U.S. He fell in love with the margarita. And he ordered them everywhere we went. It didn't matter where we were. It could be like an Italian restaurant. It could be like a Chinese restaurant. He always ordered a margarita.
Yeah, exactly.
And one time when the bartender asked him if he had a tequila preference, what is your tequila preference? He said, "I prefer quantity over quality."
I like this. So, hey, buddy, just keep them coming. Yeah.
Is that kind of like, let's just go for it? Like,
South Africans like to drink.
Sure.
They like it. They like to drink. They like to party.
Who doesn't really?
Yeah, they like. If you know nothing about South Africans, I'm gonna get beaten up for saying this, but we're very much close to Australians, which is like, just kind of like people that like the outdoors, like nature. We have
like this weird accent that's not really an English accent.
Not really English. Kind of like outdoors people, and there's an expression "rough and tumble." That describes South Africans very, very much. But I'm also a Brit. I'm also British, right? And because this is my second immigration foray. So I lived in England for a little while. I lived in Europe for a bit. Became a British national, and then I moved here because of work, which is also interesting because people think it's easy to move to the US. It's not easy at all. Well,
it's easy for some people apparently.
Well,
it depends on.
Depends on who you are. But everyone that I know that's in my circle, temporary workers. That's what we have to talk about because people think all immigrants are the same status, but they're not.
Sure.
Like when I first came, I wasn't an immigrant. I had a work visa.
Right.
That's different. Right?
Yeah.
And
they're here to do a job.
You're here to do a job for a few years. You're here to maximize your income and then enjoy yourself. You pay taxes. They have this thing about like how immigrants don't pay taxes. I really wish that was true because I don't.
Yeah.
I wish that was like true, even a little. Because
sometimes even so this is I'm not being cagey here.
Yeah.
The illegal ones pay taxes.
Yeah. I really wish that was like kind of true, but yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Here in Houston, you have if everybody who's here not legally, and there's many people who are here not legally, but they're hardworking members of society. Sure. And I'm sure they each have a different story. But if you were to empty the city of Houston, like all the bars and restaurants would close down almost immediately.
Childcare.
Yeah, so many things. And I have friends in the restaurant and bar business, and one of them explained one time. He said, "Well, he has people actually on the payroll." Like on a payroll service like ADP, right? So and I said, well, how do you give them a paycheck if you they got to have a social security number? He said they have one. They have a social security number. Yeah, it's not necessarily, it belonged to somebody somewhere along the road, right? And then it occurred to me, so he's taking taxes out of this. So these people are having taxes withheld from their check, even social security taxes. It's going into the fund, but
which they can't use,
which they can never use, right? So yes, I don't know who thinks that immigrants don't pay taxes, but even
people. I mean, it's just that's the thing.
I mean, they're actually, probably the reason why Social Security is not going to go under is
I really wish
all the people that are paying into
have
it.
to pay taxes. But I mean, I just don't want to give my money to the government, and that's just
who
who wants
does?
to?
Yeah.
Who wants to?
Well, some people do. I'm not one of those people.
I can't imagine anyone waking up every day.
It's not that I don't want to give them any money. I just feel like I've already given them enough money.
I agree. Yeah. And you have like no say in how it's being used. And,
right.
Look, I mean, like I understand roads and electricity and foundations need to be built and embassies have to exist and all that good stuff that goes with like government. I'm all for infrastructure and we should.
Yeah, right. And we did another episode with. Oh wow, his name is escaping me. Jim and. Anyway, we talked about the purpose of government. So we can't get into that because I already covered that. But I do want to come back to, okay, so you came here.
I came here as a temporary immigrant, right? As a temporary worker with a visa. And I worked for a single company and that was great. But your mindset is different because you're there for 5 years. 5 to 7 years.
Right.
It's a time box.
You're a contractor, essentially, right?
You have fun, you enjoy it, you live the life, you contribute to society, but you can't do certain things. You can't vote. Okay.
Right.
Well, maybe not.
Not at the moment.
But you can't contribute
to elections. You might be able to eventually.
You can't contribute to elections either. You can't do those things. Maybe you don't want to. And that's okay. You don't have to be involved in these things.
Right.
So that's a temporary, worker. But then I became an immigrant by becoming naturalized. I'm not naturalized. I became.
What were you before? Are you unnaturalized before you became naturalized?
Well, I was what do they call them? Alien or something? Yeah, alien. And then now I'm a permanent resident alien because I have a green card.
Yeah, you have a green card.
Exactly. And I went through the process. I applied for a green card. I went through the process, interview. Right. I will say this much. So this is again my second rodeo at becoming a national, and I'm all for collecting nationalities. This morning I kind of woke up and thought like, in about 2 or 3 years I will get another nationality.
You're young enough to get a couple more after this, probably.
I don't know if that's. I think at some point there's kind of a pushback as to like how many you can.
How many can you have?
Yeah, it depends on the country you come from, whether they allow it or not. Yeah, so
it gets complicated.
It gets kind of complicated, unnecessary, but also it gets tricky with like paying taxes. So where you live in the world is where you pay taxes. Right. So who do you pay the tax to?
Unless you live there for less than 6 months. In some countries, it depends.
I'm sure there's one of the 6 people on this call is going to be a tax lawyer.
You have to move back. You have to live like here for 5 months, and then somewhere else like I think Switzerland. You could live there for 5 months, and then like the remaining or however much, you just have to be on a boat somewhere.
Yeah, that's like the opulent. That's the aspect of rich. I wish everyone could live that.
But you could, if you didn't pay all those taxes, you could afford the boat.
I mean, like you and I live in Houston, right? Which is ridiculously hot for no reason. Like it's almost October and it's ridiculously hot.
I don't understand what you mean.
Like we should be able to summer in a cooler place.
Oh well, yeah. Fair
and
enough.
then in winter we want to go to a place that has like
Arkansas.
Good, exactly, like good winter. Arizona in 120 degrees.
Okay, so coming here now, so it sounds like you're staying here.
So I decided to stay. And that decision is interesting because I didn't make that immediately.
Right. So when you think about your decision to stay here, and you think about this notion of the American dream, how does
That's true, because look, I mean, the reality is
trying to keep it relevant.
Growing up in different parts of the world, so I've traveled and worked in different parts of the world. We, as immigrants, we are very well aware of the U.S. American dream, whatever that means, right? And it means different things for different people, right?
So give me some for instances.
The reason is we grew up with American pop culture, right? And the thing is that I think for everyone else, the American dream means different things. Some means a vision of the past that didn't really exist for some reason. For some people, the American dream is a very dark one, and it's has negative connotations. I don't want to get into that too much. It's not my history.
Yeah.
But for people like myself, has lived in different parts of the world.
By the way,
yeah.
If you're looking for somebody who's got a history that's pristine, it's very difficult to find.
It's impossible to find.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist, right? Or they're being disingenuous. So it's interesting to live in different parts of the world and then choosing the U.S. So none of us moved here. All my friends who moved here, including myself, my wife, we didn't move here out of desperation. We weren't refugees.
On the run. You weren't on the lam from the law.
Well, that could change today, man. Hey, buddy, you never know, right? Yeah, that could change now. Yeah,
Yeah.
We weren't desperate to come here. But that doesn't mean we don't want to be here. Those are two different things.
Sure.
A lot of us chose to come here, and the value that we bring is important because we've proven ourselves. So we want to be here, and we see value. The American dream for us, or for people like myself, is entrepreneurial. It's the one place I've seen in the world where if you have an entrepreneurial idea, there is mechanisms, capital, ideas for you to launch that business at very little risk to yourself and succeed. Of course, you could be crushed by capitalism, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is the capitalist market, right? So
you could be crushed by a lot of things.
Right, yeah. But what's not holding you back is bureaucracy.
Okay.
So there's no bureaucracy to your ideas. If you have a good idea, right now, let's say you have a great idea for a product, and I
had one recently. And then my wife explained to me that it's already been done.
Well, that's the man holding you down, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the man. That's big government.
I created these baseboards that we could literally just put over top of our existing baseboards because the back is carved out, so they just fit right. So you don't have to remove the old baseboards, right? Yeah. And apparently that's already. And I made them by hand and put the edge on them and everything, but apparently it's already been done. So, but I say that because. This is tricky, right? Like you say, well, there's no limit on your ideas, but it doesn't mean that you automatically have a great idea and
you need a market for it, right? But you need a place to do it. But this is the one place where you can get angel investment, you can get capital, you can get people, you can have an idea. I mean, I was at the CVS last year and I saw a product that the people who invent this product are going to come after me for saying this, but you could just basically put your foot in a device and your sock will fold into your foot. I was like, oh. I was like, how hard is it to get your sock on? Apparently now there's
how old you are, I think. It's harder for me now than it used to be, I can tell you that.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I was kind of how hard is it to get your sock on? Oh yeah, because obviously, that's a need somewhere, and the people that invented it who basically came up. I mean, look at the inventor of the toothpick. It's probably out there thinking somewhere you know what, I'm going to whittle down this piece of wood. I'm small enough to pick my teeth. I'm going to tell my friends about it. They're going to laugh me out.
Yeah.
Well, hey, buddy, that toothpick has saved so many people from embarrassing situations.
And made so many good drinks.
And saved dates.
So what's it like? So let's say one of these other places where you've...
Yeah, so there's trade-offs, right? So I like living in Europe because...
Dates, right?
There's trade-offs, right? Because you can... Each place has something different, but... And there's ups and downs for it, and we really like the U.S. I mean, the United States itself, it's so big. It's difficult to kind of put into a single paradigm what it is, right? Well, where do you live?
Well, okay, so that actually touches on a very interesting thing, which is the original concept was that it wasn't really a single unified thing, but that it was Ben Franklin famously said to somebody. I forget now. Well, madam, you have your republic, if you can keep it, right? So the idea was the states were really the sort of like the singular things, and they were together in this collective, right, called a republic with a federal, and
which you can agree on most things.
Yeah, well, and the advantage of that is that a lot of these things that we try to do in terms of society and government and programs, like it's much easier to execute at a smaller scale than it is like it's much easier for Norway as a country to do a lot of things because it's 5 million people.
Yes,
which is the size of Houston.
And they're relatively homogenous.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other topic for another day. But I'm trying to. By the way, I forgot to tell you the story about the shirt. So this is the shirt that, as you know, I'm a fan of the tropical shirts. It's pretty much my regular uniform. You probably noticed that.
I think you just got like a discount. It's like some store.
So Dan gave me the shirt. So Dan Alford gave me the shirt because one of his favorite writers is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh.
Line. What's the guy's name?
Google.
Line.
Hey Google. What's the?
Anyway, this is a shirt that Johnny Depp wore.
Oh. In the
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was the movie based on the book.
Yeah.
Written by Thank you, Hunter S. Thompson. And different take on the American dream. In fact, it's on the cover of the book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It says the subtitle is something like a furious journey into the heart of the American dream. It's a different approach. It's like drug induced, but it was anyway. So Dan loves the book, and he gave me the shirt. And so
how else would you experience Vegas?
This is it. But where are we at? Okay, so. Different people, different concepts of the dream.
And the dream means different things to different people.
Should it mean different things to different people?
It should.
It should,
right? I mean, ultimately, what is the American dream for someone like myself? Well, it's the free market economy.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The ability for you to show up here and just kind of if you have certain skill sets and you have the ability to use those skill sets, like Liam Neeson can. You can, get out there and you can do things with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think at some point, and this may sound like uberly patriotic, which I'm not, is if you hard work and you kind of push yourself, you can achieve things, and that's relatively true to some capacity.
So let's talk about that, because there's a lot of people who say that are of the mind that say, well, that's really not true because of the kind of built-in I'm trying to find the right word. There's things that are built into the system, as it were, that make it not where we need to turn the dials to really make it an equal opportunity for everybody, because otherwise, the cards are stacked against you if you're a certain person from a certain place or a certain. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, what does equal opportunity for everyone mean? Should be. So there's
the idea that
based on
generally,
on
if you work hard, you can get there if you work hard.
Correct.
That's a common.
But it's not always true for everyone, right? Because there's some factors that push against it, right? And that's a.
But there's a big difference between saying this is true for every single person in society.
It's not true. Yes, that's true. Yes.
But it doesn't mean that. But it's also potentially true for most people, and so should we manually get in there and with government and programs and other things, and should we try to turn the dials because it's not true? How many people does it not need to be true for to justify fiddling with the system or doing,
Well, first we have to kind of accept the fact that this American dream means different things to different people. But what are the basics of it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's what we were saying.
Right. So then you have to say, well, if you can't agree on the basics, then you can't fiddle those dials. How can you fine tune something where you can't agree on what the basics are?
Right.
What is the basics? Well, it should be democracy.
In some cases, it's more than fine tuning. But anyway, yeah.
It should be democracy. It should be a free market. It should be a relative amount of respect and stuff. So human rights is part of that, right? Which is part of some founding documentation.
But even those things that you just said, with the exception maybe of free market, there's different people have different views on what they mean.
They can have those views.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
as long as they can't infringe upon it.
Okay.
I mean, people can have views. Like, you can't stop. And that's also so free speech is a tenet that actually that's attractive about the U.S. Right? You can say what you want, but there's consequences about that. But people don't understand that the consequences are that the government can't do anything about it. But of course, you could, be fired from your job. You can be,
somebody can beat you up in a bar.
You can be beaten up in a bar. Like, those are the consequences of it, right? And that's fine. I mean, if you want to stand up on a pedestal somewhere and say, what
and
you
that
want to
was
say,
really the concept of free speech is that people can express themselves without the government or other large institutions, right? Like government institutions.
Yes, but it's mostly
squashing
government.
them.
Correct. Squashing those ideas,
mostly government, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, probably all because most things that were put in place historically were done because of something else, some other condition that existed prior that was kind of notorious for causing a problem, and so we put these things in place to correct that. So the previous condition was that, governments, or however the government was structured, so it might be, depending on the system, it might be the landowners or whoever, but whoever was in charge, right, they would squash people for not for speaking out against whoever
That's
they
right.
were.
And you couldn't say much about it.
Right.
I mean that could be true for like maybe people that are living in kind of a building somewhere, and the landowner is just a terrible human being, and but there's actually now there's laws and rules that can help people get access to that information to do things about it. Right?
Yeah, well, when I say landowners, I mean back during certain times in Europe, for example, where
exactly.
the landowners were the government, right?
There was no recourse against a landowner back then. He could do pretty much whatever he wanted to, and there's very little.
And that's what Adams, no relation to the presidential Adams is. Yeah. That's what he was getting at. Is he said what we've created in this country at this point in time, 1931, which is just whatever it is, 150 years from the beginning, is a place where we've done away with all that, where just in principle at least, you can be whoever you are and try to go do whatever you want to do and potentially succeed at it and do what you need to do to live a better, richer, fuller life. And what he's saying is that in this country, we've created a place where that's possible. In contrast to most all the places in the world up to that point where, that wasn't possible. And so the question is, now we fast forward almost 100 years. There are people with different opinions, right? So there are people or different viewpoints. There are some people who say it's still possible. The American dream is still there for whoever wants to chase it and whoever wants to work hard and be successful. That's it. There are other people who say, well, no, it's not because the system is stacked against a lot of people, and we need to like reverse bias the system so that it helps the people that has been hurting. And then there's other people who say it's a stupid dream and it's not the way that things should work at all. So I don't know where I was going with that, but when you come here, when you come here, and even though you say, well, it means different things to different people, there's some commonalities.
There's some commonalities. The other one that's part of the dream is actually the social contract, right? So there's a social contract
right.
that we have to kind of like abide by, right? So yes, there's the respect for the individual, personal freedoms, right? Yeah. But we all live in a society, whether that society is federal or states, it's still a society. Sure. So we have to kind of observe by certain rules, right? I mean, your shirt. I don't know, man. I mean, like, in parts of the country that may not be allowed to wear that shirt.
It is a bit offensive. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly. Just for the eyesight alone.
Even for me, this one's kind of out there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, there's a social contract we all have to agree on, right? And that's part of the dream, right? So, there's personal freedoms, but there's also the social contract. So, how do we behave in society? Because we can't be all individuals, and we can't have all personal freedoms and individualistic, because society will eventually will crumble down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we may revert back to that landlord system where the one with the most power will take over everything, and then we'll be, we can't have that, right? So there's a balance of that.
I mean, there's something to be said for the benevolent monarchy. It's simpler. It is simpler.
This is why the French invented the guillotine, right? So because like,
it does.
It's just a reminder. It's like, hey, buddy. Yeah,
it does. Yeah. So,
But look,
right.
as an immigrant, like.
But your story. So you said the reasons why I like it here is because of the free market, the entrepreneurialism, that's very consistent with.
That's right. And in fact, like everyone in my circle has similar kind of like aspirations about doing things, right? They all showed up here without much investment and built up their own kind of capital.
Right.
Which means that, none of us showed up here with extreme wealth.
Yeah.
And not that we are extremely wealthy. That's not the
clearly
way we're going. Yeah, clearly.
The way you show up for a podcast.
But I mean, like, I have friends who basically have their main jobs and then started other businesses that they do,
right.
investment businesses, or they've like maybe a friend that's basically he started he bought a used car, fixed it up and sold it. And then he bought 3 used cars.
And when you say friends, you're talking about friends who also are not from here, right?
That's right.
So the very interesting thing.
Yes.
What you're saying there is you all, as we say,
you people,
you all, y'all, you people,
y'all.
you people,
y'all,
you people, that you got here and said basically, holy shit. There's all kinds of things that we can do.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Like I got a job, but I can do like so you weren't really like tripping over all of these like things that sometimes people complain about. You just saw like a wide open space to do what you want to do,
yes.
And that's what you're doing.
That's exactly right.
For your friends, at least. Anyway, I don't know what you're doing.
Well, I mean, it's not just people I know, but it's you can see,
right?
Like you can, like there's gaps in all these things, and if you want to do something about it, you can fill those gaps.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't have to be like everyone think, oh well, you mean high tech, or you mean like create an app. It's like no, I don't mean. I mean literally like my buddy who set up a garage.
Bought a car, right?
Bought a car. He has a garage and he has a business. He's hired X number of like Americans that work and help.
Right.
So that's exactly what you should be doing.
Right.
Right. That's exactly the right direction.
And you just showed up, and you and your friends.
Showed up. He had a job.
He just showed up.
He said, hey, I can do this. Yeah.
He did that. Right.
Yep.
And nothing stopped him.
Nothing can stop him. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no bureaucracy that'll stop him.
So what?
In fact, it's encouraged to do so.
Right. That's a great person. I mean, it's an. What do you think?
Our feedback.
So,
other people are here because of they're fleeing war, they're fleeing famine. They have different things. But if you look at them give them time, they'll also have like. I was like, hey, maybe I can set up a food cart somewhere else.
But so here's what I'm curious. So you, as part of you people, and you and your friends who came here, with that perspective that said, I could do anything, right? There's a whole bunch of people that are here, and I don't want to take this down a road of like bashing on anybody, but the fact is that there's lots of people who are from here, and they either don't see it that way, or aren't able, or whatever. Like, what do you all think when you look at people who are from here, and they don't have that same perspective, that same energy? Like, why? Yeah,
it's the curse of
what's
success.
holding them back?
It's the curse of success, right? So it's a generational problem that we see in many countries where almost every single country in the world is built up by immigrants. It depends how far back you go in history, but every country, immigrants came from somewhere, and they basically populated, changed the dynamic of the country, and moved the country in a certain direction.
So potentially, immigrants by definition have a different energy.
That's right.
From the people who are
here.
Indigenous.
But ultimately, you want to
because you went somewhere because you wanted to do something.
I mean, I grew up in South Africa because my ancestors in 1820 were immigrants by themselves.
Yeah,
they showed up
somewhere else.
Showed up. Right. They came from India and they showed up to work in the sugarcane plantation.
You're just like this whole like mix mash of things. Yeah,
all different things, right? So entrepreneurially, like I'm generation 3 from that group. None of us work in those fields. We all basically have like other careers, right?
Right, sure.
And like I would imagine generation 5 now basically is the group that you are thinking about now, which has basically become like complacent or enjoys the luxuries that generation 1 to 4 had. So
I guess. I mean,
but I'm an immigrant now, so I have that mentality of like, I'm here now. What's the best I can do? And it isn't about like taking opportunity from other people. That's never been the case, right?
No, it's there. I mean,
it's there for the taking.
Yeah,
and like
you're not. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So do it, but also the value you create is different, but the fun you also have enjoying it. Like, I mean, there's a lot here to enjoy. We like it here. Right?
So could people here who are from here, essentially, what you're saying is if they changed so the people who are here who are from here who are under this notion that something is holding them back or holding them down or the system's against them or whatever, what you're saying is if they had the right frame of mind and the right energy and the right determination, they could actually. There's really nothing stopping them. They could change.
I mean,
I'm leaving out
some legitimate.
Let's leave out specific people with extenuating circumstances,
that's
right? So we're speaking in generalities.
Yeah. I mean, it's there.
And this is one of the problems that whenever people start to try to debate what's good or bad for society or what people ought to do or what the government ought to do, they always hinge their arguments on that very small portion that has extenuating circumstances.
There is that,
right?
There is that, yeah,
but
exactly.
broadly, people could.
I mean, look at. Let's take an example of like communal making money out of real estate, right? So to buy a house requires some sort of capital. If you can find an area that's growing or about to become gentrified, like if 2 or 3 different parties came together, pull their capital, they could buy a residential property and flip it within a year. From that capital, they could then diversify and take that thing and invest in other properties and then other properties, which means that like it doesn't take an individual to do that. It takes a group of people. So like if you have like 3 or 4 different families that suddenly can put enough capital together, you could do that. Right? So this is what I'm trying to get to. Right? It's like this, like just that small example is something that you could probably do. Nothing stops them from doing it.
So I'm gonna stitch together a thought here based on all the stuff that you said. Also, we're going to wrap up because otherwise we get wisecracks from the peanut gallery about how long we talk. So
it's just the one guy, right?
It's just the one guy. If I put all this stuff together, like as I'm sitting here listening to what you're saying, there are certain kinds of people in the world that have the energy and the determination and the people who want to go do something. Those people, when they live in a place where they're not able to do that, they leave that place. And more often than not, where do they come? Here. Right? They come to the U.S. because they see that that they can do those things unencumbered by the things that would encumber them wherever they are.
That's correct.
And when they get here, again, broadly speaking, the plan works.
Broadly speaking.
And they're able to do it. So if you take that same type of person, so here in the U.S., pursuing the American dream, you've got the sort of people who say, I want to do something. I can do something. I'm going to do a lot of things. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to, like whatever all those things are, right? Either they're from here and they do it and they succeed, or they're not from here, but they're that kind of person, and so they left wherever they were and came here because you could be here and do it and succeed. Is that? I mean,
that's right.
Is that a fair conclusion?
The American dream is not perfect by any means, and it deserves criticism, and it's okay to criticize a country. Like I don't believe in patriotism because it's too blind.
You don't believe in
in being a patriot. Because it's too blind.
It depends on the definition.
On the definition,
right?
Exactly.
I think the classical definition of patriotism is I want the best for my country. Right.
That's different from what it is now.
That's different from what it is.
Which
now,
means no criticism. Right?
Well, I want the best for my country, and I'm willing to do something, and I'm willing to fight for it, and I'm willing to take an active role.
And I would agree with that.
To get the best for my country.
I would agree with that, right? Because the non-criticism part of patriotism is something I'm concerned about, right?
Yeah.
But let's take that aside, right? I think a lot of people right now who are kind of born here with 2nd or 3rd generation, or 7th generation Americans, they don't have a worldview of what else is out there. The American dream is not perfect by any means, but it's one of the best systems we have right now that allows you to have to kind of have that entrepreneurial kind of vision, that opportunity. If you want that, maybe you don't want that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you're supposed to come here and just kind of have a job.
But
you can if you want to.
Right.
And if you don't want to, there's other places you can kind of immigrate. You're an immigrant. You don't have to be here.
Yeah.
You can immigrate to other places if you want to. Right?
Or you can stay here, and then we'll probably take care of you either way.
Yeah, it's also harder in other places too. So to kind of, I mean, look, people are prosperous all around the world for different things. Right?
Yeah.
The U.S. is not perfect by any means, but it's not looking for perfection.
Right.
Perfection is a kind of like North Korean fantasy where like it's perfect and everything is fine, right?
Yeah. That's.
But is it good enough? Is it great?
Well, it's the old joke, right? If you ever find a bunch of people that are perfect, don't go there because you're going to ruin it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty good system. It's not perfect. We can work on it. We can do better, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. And
a lot of people enjoy. Okay, there's no shortage of people wanting to come here. But let's exclude refugees and people fleeing extreme
swimming across the river.
Let's look at people who are here who are economic migrants. Let's take that one group only, which are usually highly skilled people or semi-skilled people, and they want to come here. Has there been a decline in that?
No.
And why is that?
Well, because of everything you just said, right? Yeah.
And that's the simple thing. Right? Look at the data. The data says that there's been no decline of economic migration. And if there has, I'd love to learn about why that is and where it is, but we've not really seen that.
Yeah.
In fact, there's been an upkeep of that.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, we get into fighting about how many of the work visas should we allow.
That's a different argument.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole different thing.
But the point is that I met my wife and I were in New York City right before that thing that happened the last couple of years with that little flu virus thing that was going around.
Did you hear
about that?
No. I was in I had no idea. Yeah, it was lockdown.
I'm joking because obviously it was very serious for a lot of people, but anyway, it was perfect timing, and we decided to go to New York City just to hang out for a long weekend in October of 2019. So right before everything kind of went to hell, and we were riding. I can't remember if it was a cab or an Uber driver, and he was probably early 30s. He was from China originally. That makes him Chinese, I think, right? I think you're still allowed to say that he's Chinese because he's from China.
I'm sure he will call himself Chinese.
He was a Chinese person. And he's been here ever since he was 18 or 17. He was in high school. And so he's telling us this whole story. Because I love to talk to taxi drivers and Uber drivers because you just hear the most amazing stuff, especially in big cities. And he said his parents arranged, so he took a school trip. He was in China in high school. He took a school trip to somewhere in Canada. And somehow his parents arranged this whole thing where he was going to sneak away from the school group, and somebody was waiting for him, and he got on a boat and went to New York City, to Manhattan, where he went to Chinatown and got a job working in a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, and that was when he was 17 or 18 years old. Now he's 32, and he's got a wife and kids, and he's doing really well, and he loves it here. Fantastic story. And he said, and I forget what we were talking about exactly, but he said, don't let anybody fool you. He stopped and turned around and looked at us. He said, it doesn't matter what you hear. Everybody over there wants to come here. He was referring to China. He's like, everybody I know in China wants to come here. He said, don't believe what you hear, and don't let anybody fool you. Everybody in China wants to come here. So I'm probably going to be censored now in China. They're not going to.
There goes your audience.
There goes. We just lost 2 people.
There goes, yeah.
2 of the 6 people are now no longer listening.
Exactly.
But that resonates with what you said, right? Which is that people want to come here for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say, I don't ever want to move here. They'll give you various reasons. And I would always say, what if I gave you my green card? And in a heartbeat, I guarantee you, if that was something you could actually do, you can't do that, by the way.
Yeah, you can't do it, right?
You can't do that, right? But if I could do that, which I never will do.
Not legally.
Not legal, right? If that was something that was possible, I guarantee in a heartbeat they'll be on a plane right here.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, we have a lot of people here who say, I don't like America. I'm going to go to some other country.
Go experience the world. They should go see the world. Yeah,
and I mean that. Like I don't mean it in the sense of don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. Although maybe sometimes I mean that. But I mean if you're here and what this is and the whole philosophy that this is built on doesn't align with what you think, then you should go somewhere where it does.
Like I said, go experience the world.
Is that a terrible thing to say?
No, I always say you have no worldview. You have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
What else is out there? It's not. There are other places that are better in some things.
Sure.
Right, for different reasons, and that may resonate with you. So, good luck. Find that place. Yeah.
And then it makes more room for.
But I will say this much: it doesn't. The U.S. doesn't ask too much for you to become an American. You have to take a test, which is easy to pass.
You have to be here for a while.
You have to be able to communicate. So, but even then, I found that the language test isn't very hard to do. So, you should be able to speak the language to actually integrate. Other countries demand a language integration. So
true.
Yeah. There's no fluency test here.
No, and you can usually find a community that is that you don't have to be right. You don't have to be perfect in English.
You don't have to. I mean, English is not national. There's no national language of the U.S.
And a lot of people get bent out of shape about that, where they're like, "Oh, if you're gonna come here, you need to learn to speak English.
You gotta speak American here.
Yeah,
show up here."
That doesn't bother me. I really don't or here in Houston when we have a lot of billboards that are in Spanish, and there are people who get kind of like bent out of shape about that.
Why should it bother you?
It doesn't bother me at all. We have a lot of people here who speak Spanish.
Yeah, exactly.
They're good people. It's helpful for them to.
You should be able to speak.
Also, we got way too damn many billboards in Houston anyway.
So language aside is kind of weird. It freaks people out.
Yeah. Well, and I think
you should be able to communicate.
It's kind of an American thing, though, right? Because if you live in Europe, this is something I learned from working with people in Europe. In Europe, essentially just. By way of analogy, you have a whole bunch of countries that if you look at Europe and the U.S., the countries over there are kind of like the states over here, about that size, and they're all squashed together and everything. And so you always have people mixing and mingling and people in different places speaking different languages, because if there was a language for different states in the U.S., I think we wouldn't get so weird about people not speaking English, right? But because it's ubiquitous for such a large area, and it's just really the people around the borders that you know what I'm saying. I think it's just.
There's no demand to speak English, and if you don't want to, that's okay. But I would assume the majority of people do speak it, and you want to communicate. You want to be able to call 911 for help, and if you can't speak, you can't do that in a language they can understand, I would assume most.
So I've never called 911. Well, I have, but it's been a long time.
They're bilingual, right? They used to be bilingual.
Does it say push 1 for Spanish if you want to?
That's just Spanish and English. But
right.
you could come from a part of the world that is neither Spanish or English.
Sure.
So then, if you can't communicate in either of those languages, how do you get? How do you get by? How do you call for help if you fall down, or the person you're with is injured? What do you do?
Yeah. You're right. It's
I always say, you should be able to communicate a little bit in the language here.
I spent one time when I was young, before I was married, I spent 3 or 4 months living in Mexico City, and I can tell you that it was a lot easier living there, knowing something about Spanish. I'm sorry, are you late for your next thing?
No.
And we do need to wind up, wrap up, wind up. Wind up is the beginning. Wrap up is the end.
Yeah.
So,
wind
Reishin,
up means something else.
Thanks for coming over again. And I feel like there's more we could talk about. So we'll wait a few weeks to give some other people a turn, and then we'll come back and do some more.
Thank you.
Rob Roy. By the way, I had the gin and tonic today because it's kind of a lunchtime drink. But without the lime, because I haven't gone to the grocery store.
So Rob Roy makes me an alcoholic because I'm drinking.
Yeah, it's more of an evening drink, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So Scotch. So it's just like a Manhattan. I made yours on the rocks today because I just did. But you could have it up as well, martini style, with Scotch and. Anyway, you're done. Were we done?
We're done.
All right. Thanks. We're done.